Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopidhanna Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopidhanna Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Bradadana Ranjana Yashodanandana Bradadana Ranjana Yamunatira Banachari Yamunatira Banachari Deurada Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Bihari Gopidhanna Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopidhanna Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Bradadana Ranjana Yashodanandana Bradadana Ranjana Yamunatira Banachari Yamunatira Banachari Jayo Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jai Jai Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajikacharya Sutara Sutasi Srimati Rani Swami Divine Grace Jai Sri Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jaya Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajikacharya Sutara Sutasi Srimati Rani Swami Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Thakur Prabhupada Ki Jai. Ananta Gaudiya Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. Eastern DVD Founder Church Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Namaskar Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem the whole Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Sri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shyama Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhana Ki Jai. Vrindavan Dhama Ki Jai. Mathura Dhama Ki Jai. Shrimad Dhama Ki Jai. Viganapuri Dhama Ki Jai. Gangamai Unamai Ki Jai. Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Chancel Bhakti Sibhushan Ki Jai. Harinam Sankirtan Yagya Ki Jai. Chancel Prasad Sibhushan Ki Jai. Nitai Gaur Premanandi Hari Hari. All Gauri's assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. All Gauri's assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. All Gauri's assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories to Sri Sri Guru and Gauranga, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Today we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, 4th Canto, 23rd chapter. Maharaj Prithu is going back home. Texts 23 through 25, and we are chanting 23. Vilokyanugatam sadvim, pritum viravaram patim, Tushtuvor varada devair, Deva Patnya Sahasrashaha, Vilokya Nugatam Sadvim, Pritum Vira Varampatim, Tushtuvor Varada Devair, Deva Patnya Sahasrashaha,
Vilokyanugatam sadvim, Pritum Vira Varampatim, Tushtuvor Varada Devair, Deva Patnyak Sarasrashaha,
Vilokyanugatam sadvim, Virtum Vira Varampatim, Tushtuvor Varada Devair, Deva Patnyak Sahasrashaha,
Devapatya Sahasrashaha
Vilokyanugatam svadvim Ritum Giravarapatim Tushtuvor Varada Devaya Devapatna Sahasrashaha Vaishnavis
Vilokyanugatam sadvim Pritum viravaram patim Tushtuvur varada devayar Devapatnya sahasrashaha
Vilokayantu gatam sadvim Pritum viravaram patim Tushtuvur varada devair Devapatnya sahasrashaha
Vilokya
Vilokya
by observing Anugatam dying after the husband Sadvim the chaste woman Pritum of King Prithu Viravaram the great warrior Patim husband Tushtuvuhu offered prayers Varadaha able to give benediction Devai by the demigods Devapatnyaha the wives of the demigods Sahasrashaha in thousands Translate. After observing this brave act performed by the chaste wife Archie, the wife of the great King Prithu, many thousands of the wives of the demigods, along with their husbands, offered prayers to the queen, for they were very much satisfied. 24. Kurvatya kusuma saram tasmin mandarasani nandatsvamaraturiyeshu grinantisma parasparam. At that time, the demigods were situated on the top of Mandara hill, and all their wives began to shower flowers on the funeral pyre, and began to talk among themselves as follows. 25. Devya uchu ahoyam vadurdhanya yachaivam bhu bhujam patim sarvatmana patim beje jagyesham shrir vadhur iva. The wives of the demigods said, all glories to Queen Archie. We can see that this queen of the great King Prithu, the emperor of all the kings of the world, has served her husband with mind, speech, and body, exactly as the goddess of fortune serves the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Yagyesha, or Vishnu. Purport. In this verse, the words Jagyesham Shrir Vaduriva indicate that Queen Archie served her husband just as the goddess of fortune serves the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vishnu. We can observe that even in the history of this world, when Lord Krishna, the Supreme Vishnu, was ruling over Dwarka, Queen Rukmini, who was the chief of all of Krishna's queens, used to serve Lord Krishna personally, in spite of having many hundreds of maidservants to assist her. Similarly, The goddess of fortune in the Vaikuntha planets also serves Narayan personally, although there are many thousands of devotees prepared to serve the Lord. This practice is also followed by the wives of the demigod. And in days past, the wives of men also followed this same principle. In Vedic civilization, the husband and wife were not separated by such man-made laws as divorce. We should understand the necessity for maintaining family life in human society and should thus abolish this artificial law known as divorce. The husband and wife should live in Krishna consciousness and follow in the footsteps of Lakshmi Narayan or Krishna Rukmini. In this way, peace and harmony can be possible within this world. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Jena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Gadamhayam Dadhati Svapadantikam Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Sari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangum Langayate Girim Yat Kripadam Maham Vande Sri Guru Dinataranam Paramananda Madhavam Sri Chaitanya Ishwaram Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripasindubhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Hare Krishna. So the blessings of all the Vaishnavas and Vaishnavis. Thank you for allowing me to be part of your Sangha. We chose this verse specifically because of the topic of Sahamarana and divorce. Only one time in Vrindavan, I had a more difficult task. The topic was human sacrifice and also sati and some more topics like that. So when we read Shastra and we have a mundane mentality, sometimes it is quite distasteful to read about these topics because we have become quite conditioned by our current mindset. Nowadays, when we hear about these topics of abolishing divorce laws or a lady entering the funeral pyre of her husband, then there's great outcries and people will challenge and argue. So there's different levels of how to understand this. First of all, Shastra is not trying to be politically correct, but it is delineating the highest truth, Sakshat to Dharma Bhagavatam, the Dharma that comes from the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Dharmam to Sakshat Bhagavat Pranitam. Navai Vidyurisha Napi Deva. This is coming from the top, from Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and thus all the rishis, sages, and demigods, they're all following suit. Now, when Manu wrote down his famous treatise, the Manu Sanghita, he also mentioned that I have written these laws for my people of my time. And in your time, the people should find the most knowledgeable and the most wise persons who will help them understand these laws in their time. That doesn't mean time, place, and circumstances changes everything, but it means that we have to understand the letter of the law and the spirit of the law. So the topic here is chastity. Now, when a man speaks about chastity, oftentimes it can be taken in a wrong way, and people can misconstrue or they can feel that it is not very objective, and the topic may not seem to be very palatable. Therefore, I choose just to make it a little more broad and a little more inclusive. I'm going to read the verse from the also 4th canto, 28th chapter, just following suit, of the Puranjana story about Queen Vaidarbi, the daughter of Vidarbha, and how she was lamenting upon the death of her husband. So this is 4:28:47. Being now alone and a widow in that forest, the daughter of Vidarbha began to lament, incessantly shedding tears, which soaked her breasts and crying very loudly. Purport. Figuratively, the queen is supposed to be the disciple of the king. Thus, when the mortal body of the spiritual master expires, his disciples should cry exactly as the queen cries when the king leaves his body. However, the disciple and spiritual master are never separated, because the spiritual master always keeps company with the disciple, as long as the disciple follows strictly the instructions of the spiritual master. This is called the association of Vani, words. Physical presence is called Vapu. As long as the spiritual master is physically present, the disciple should serve the physical body of the spiritual master. And when the spiritual master is no longer physically existing, the disciple should serve the instructions of the spiritual master. So chastity, not just as a quality of the feminine, but chastity as a quality of the disciple in regards to their spiritual master. Thus, it is applicable and relevant to all of us. Otherwise, ladies may feel, oh, now again, we're going to hear this again, harping the chastity, blowing the chastity horn, or some men may think, yes, this is what we need to enforce. But actually, this is what we all need to hear, because as aspiring disciples of our spiritual master, this quality of chastity is very much foundational for advancing in spiritual life. Yasyadeve parabhaktir yatadeve tatagurau tasyaite katitahi arta prakashante mahatmana. If we are able to please the spiritual master, then all the imports of the Vedic literatures will become revealed in our heart. And chastity is one of the first and foremost qualifications of a disciple. What does it mean to be chaste? It doesn't mean that we are dressing, walking, talking, or always being in close proximity to the spiritual master. But it means that we have fidelity, that our understanding is not deviating from the understanding of the spiritual master. We do not try to interpret and to screw out some ulterior meaning from the teachings of our spiritual master. Unchasteful would mean to have the behavior of a prostitute who is an opportunist, who is always looking for a better deal. Is there somebody out there who can offer me something more? She may be embracing one customer, but while she's embracing that customer, she is looking over the shoulder of that customer, looking out. Maybe there is somebody who can pay me more. And in her mind, she's fantasizing, oh, when will that perfect person come who will truly appreciate me and give me what I truly deserve? But to be chaste means that I am firmly resolute in my purpose to serve the lotus feet of my spiritual master, and I will not deviate from this, even for a quarter inch, even for a moment, no matter who comes and offers me what. Unfortunately, Kali Yuga is a desperate age, and there's a lot of desperate people, and people will come and they will try to entice and say, I have got some higher truths, I've got some more esoteric knowledge, I've got some more valuable thing, and you can get it, but only from me for a very limited time. Special offer, now only. And people who are not firmly resolute in their determination to be chaste and faithful and loyal to the instructions of their spiritual master may become enticed and may think, oh, maybe there's a higher type of initiation. Maybe I can get a name that is a little more intimate, a little more confidential, something a little more rasika. And in this way, I can make rapid spiritual advancement. And thus, they are compromising their vows and deviating from the principle of chastity. So, Shastra is here to remind us of what is the proper course of action. And therefore, here in the purport, Srila Prabhupada is giving us these beautiful examples of Queen Rukmini, who is the chief of Krishna's queens. And even though she had hundreds and thousands of maidservants, she personally assisted Krishna in all his activities. And she was fanning him personally and looking to his every comfort. She could not imagine a life without Krishna. Even to the extent that when Krishna jokingly mentioned to her that actually, I'm not really qualified for you, and you should find a better suitor, and I am just a vagabond. I'm not really interested in this kind of life, so you better choose somebody else as your husband. She took these jokes as serious, and she felt like a banana tree who was being cut at the root. And she was so affected by these joking words of Krishna. And then, of course, the whole love quarrel ensued, and it is very beautifully described in the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam and in Srila Prabhupada's Krishna book. In a similar way, the goddess of fortune, Lakshmi, she is personally serving Narayan, even though there are thousands and thousands of devotees who are prepared to serve the Lord. That doesn't mean that she will block others or keep them out, but she is taking great joy and pride in doing menial service for Lord Narayan, as in massaging his lotus feet, as in cleaning his quarters, as in looking for his comfort. So Srila Prabhupada writes in his purport here that this practice is also followed by the wives of the demigods. And in the past, the wives of men also followed the same principle. Now you can take this a little bit with a pun intended, but we can see that nowadays the tendency is that everybody wants to dominate. Everybody wants to be in charge. Everybody wants to control. And it is stated that even after, let me get this quote just so you get the right quote here. Bhaktivinoda Thakur writes in Kalyana Kalpataru that long after you're confident that you are free from sex desires, comes on the horizon prestige and adoration, the last snares of Maya to make you fall. So the tendency to control and to enjoy is still there in the conditioned soul. It may be very subtle, but it is still there. We can see now in these times of crisis, have you ever seen how somebody tells you, oh, social distance, get away from me, or your mask is too much down or too much up or too much left or too much right. And they become all OCD. They become very adamant in trying to tell others what to do and what not to do. It can happen even amongst friends and family. And thus, relationships wear a little thin, and respect and appreciation is diminished. So when we have a service attitude, we're trying to understand what will please the object of my worship, what will please my worshipful Lord, the spiritual master, the person who I'm trying to serve. And that means to be one. There has to be oneness in desire, oneness in purpose. So much so that after a person dies, the other person does not want to be separated from that person. And we can see how even today sometimes it happens that couples who have been so close to each other, when one of them dies, usually the other one dies just a few days afterwards, because they do not have the desire to live a separate life from the other person. So naturally we know that this practice has had to be abolished and outlawed because people were taking undue advantage and were making a rule and forcing women to take on this practice, which formerly was a voluntary thing. Just like we know that Kunti and Madri, when Pandu died, they both wanted to enter the fire, but they agreed that Kunti would look after the infant children and Madri would enter the fire to be reunited with Pandu. So it's not a one-off occurrence, but it was quite common, especially amongst Kshatriyas, that they would follow this procedure. Now, of course, we're in Kali Yuga, and this is not really a common practice or even advised, because people do not have this type of resolve and this type of determination. So Srila Prabhupada writes that the divorce law should be abolished, because if we want to maintain family life in human society, then one should abide by the Vedic principles and not by these man-made laws of divorce. Not much to say about this. He puts it pretty direct and pretty frank, so I don't think one can really argue with that. But he's giving us the solution on how to actually implement this. He says husband and wife should live in Krishna consciousness and follow in the footsteps of Lakshmi Narayan or Rukmini Krishna. In this way, peace and harmony can be possible within this world. In other words, if there is mutual respect and appreciation and a service attitude, and the relationship is very congenial. When Krishna is in the center and both husband and wife are engaged in the service of Krishna and they're engaging in Sankirtan together, then the relationship is very congenial and there is no need for separation. And there will be peace and harmony in this situation. So here it's quite interesting to see how the demigods, they were watching from the top of Mandara Hill. It seems that was the spot, that was the hangout spot, and they were all observing what was going on the earth planet, and they were showering flowers on the funeral pyre that Archie had just entered, and they were praising her. They were saying, just see how glorious she is. She has really served her husband with mind, speech, and body exactly like the goddess of fortune. So they were appreciating her. So this shows the culture of appreciation is the culture of the demigods. When we have a culture of appreciation, we can actually see the true qualities and characteristics of a person. Whatever we appreciate, appreciates. When we can have that culture of appreciation, then relationships actually grow. Try it out for this week. Just every day, try to appreciate 3 people. And notice something that they do or something about them and commend them on it. And you will see how the relationship will improve. The relationship will grow. So Vaishnava culture is a culture of appreciation. Srila Prabhupada was very, very fond of appreciating his disciples. And he oftentimes mentioned that not just individuals, but also places and countries he was very grateful to America, especially to New York. He said that New York and San Francisco have given me more men and money than any other place. So Srila Prabhupada was very concerned about showing his appreciation for the individual devotees, but also for the places where they were coming from. So he was always thinking very fondly of these places. And that is something to take note of, especially in the light of, we just had a few days ago Srila Prabhupada's Tirobhav, TT, Srila Prabhupada's Disappearance Day, where we all reflected on his teachings, his legacy, and his life, and his example, and how we can rededicate our lives to Srila Prabhupada's mission to also absorb ourselves wholeheartedly in his service. So, when we're engaging in the mission of the spiritual master, there are so many seeming options, sometimes obstacles, sometimes just too many options that are there. So to have the nature of simplicity is actually a virtue. It is a wonderful quality. In the Brihad Bhagavatamrita, we have the story of Gop Kumar, who was a simple cowherd boy from Govardhan. And in his journey throughout the universe, he was looking for his worshipful Lord, Madan Gopal. Wherever he was not satisfied. Even though he was elevated in so many positions. He was the king of Puri, he became Brahma, he became Indra, he went to all these different places. But in his heart of hearts, he was always hankering for the service of Madan Gopal, for having his loving friendship. Even when he was in Vaikuntha, he played his flute for Vishnu. And Vishnu commended him on his flute playing. And he was appreciating Gop Kumar's flute playing. Even though Gop Kumar may not have played exactly according to the style that was current in Vaikuntha. But he appreciated his service. So that shows us that we should also learn how to appreciate the service of any devotee, big or small, whatever their proficiency or their lack thereof might be. So just like that bum who came into 26 2nd Avenue and Srila Prabhupada was giving class, and as that person, he walked in the door and he went to the bathroom and he put down some rolls of toilet paper and some paper napkins, and then he walked out without saying a word to anybody. And Srila Prabhupada mentioned, he commented, and he said, obviously this person is not in order, as he put it. Yet he has decided, let me do some service here. And so Srila Prabhupada appreciated it. He could have told them, don't let him in. He's not looking or smelling good. He probably kept his shoes on. I don't think he took his shoes off when he walked in to put that there. But Srila Prabhupada chose to appreciate. He chose to see the good thing and to fan that spark. So as aspiring Prabhupada Anugas, followers of Srila Prabhupada, let us also meditate and see how we can appreciate not just ourselves, not just each other, but each and every living entity. Of course, sometimes we are very eager to tolerate and to appreciate on the streets because there we get some immediate reciprocation and result. But in our own Sangha, it's more difficult. It's very easy to criticize. Sometimes we get very anxious to tell people how it is and to prove them wrong or to add what they've forgotten, instead of just appreciating the simplicity and the offering that person has made. Just like sometimes somebody may offer you just something very simple. They may just give you a flower, or a child may draw some scribbles on a piece of paper, and you cannot even fully recognize what it is. Yet, if we can accept it as an offering of love and appreciate the essence, the love, the affection that is being expressed, then the relationship can actually grow. So that art is being shown here by the demigods and their wives, who are appreciating Archie, who is inhabitant of the earthly realm. The earthly realm is way below the heavenly realm. But the demigods, they are appreciating the great act of surrender and sacrifice and chastity of Archie by entering into the funeral pyre of her husband and attaining the same destination as her glorious husband. So that act of appreciation is making the society very strong and very attractive. Wherever there is appreciation, things appreciate. So the association will also appreciate, because people like to be appreciated. Try it out in your Sangha, that you just say something nice about every person in your Sangha. Just like I appreciate that I've been invited to this August Assembly, even though I am way, way, way junior and I don't even know most of you, yet somehow by good fortune and the trust of some of you, I've been invited to take part in this. So for me, it shows that there is an inclusive spirit. Just like when the sages, they assembled and gathered, there was so many rishis and maharishis and yogis and munis, countless of them were there. And not to draw a comparison, but just to extract a point of reference, sometimes we have this idea that there can only be one person who can speak. But Srila Prabhupada made it very clear that anybody who reads my books and hears my teachings can speak on this philosophy. So when Maharaj Parikshit sat down to fast, not only was there Vyasadeva, there was Narad Muni, there was the who's who, everybody was there. And so there were so many qualified speakers that they were a little puzzled. Who's going to speak? And he's the emperor, he's the king. Who's going to talk to him? And then walks in Shukadeva Goswami, 16 years old, obviously the youngest of them all. And he was only dressed by the four directions. And he spoke the Bhagavatam to Maharaj Parikshit. Yet his father, his guru, they were all present. And they were ecstatic. They were happy. They were blissful. Yes, this is our boy. He is speaking the Vedic wisdom to the king. So we can see that this culture of appreciation is a culture of empowerment. And this is a very powerful and potent nucleus which will actually bring people in. It will keep people in and it will bring people in. But if we have a culture of exclusivity, that we say, we are a very elite club, we are very fortunate because we're the only few people who know what we know, because we were born in a very special place, in a very special time, and we are very fortunate because we spent some time with our teacher, but nobody can get what we have, then people will say, okay, I'm happy for you, and let me go somewhere else and do something else. So if we can actually imbibe this mood of empowerment and inclusivity, like it is exemplified in the Bhagavatam, like it is demonstrated by Srila Prabhupada, then the only questions on people's minds should be, how can I be part of your group? How can I be part of your Sangha? I don't want to go anywhere else. I want to stick it out with you because you guys are the best thing that ever happened in my life. And then that's where the real preaching starts. Then we don't have to, do marketing gimmicks and, switch, bait and switch and do all kinds of, no, because people will be attracted on the level of the heart, not just on the level of the mind or on the level of the intellect. But the buy-in will be love and trust. I was just in Texas to visit some friends, and we were in Houston in a parking lot next to a park. And one lady, she came there in a big Audi, and I showed her Prabhupada's books, and she was quite emotional. And she said, I'm so sad, I just want to cry. I just came here to cry. I want to cry all day. And I said, it's okay. You can cry. It's perfectly fine. I just would love you to look at these books, and I'm sure this will help you. She looked at the books, and she calmed down, and then she said, I really just wanted to cry all day, but now I meet you, and I'm already feeling much better. And she took 4 books and gave a donation. So when we're out there meeting the people, we can actually see how what is written about in the Bhagavatam is not just theoretical. The sufferings of the material world, it's not just something that's a marketing tool that it's written about here in these books. No, it's an actual fact. It's a reality. Except maybe in Hawaii, where Srila Prabhupada said that you can still have some semblance of enjoyment. But nowadays, we can feel the pinprick. We can feel that pinch wherever we are. Things are so polarized. I just traveled for 2.5 months. I visited devotees in Utah, in Michigan, in New York, in Florida, in Georgia, and in Texas. And it's quite interesting to see how not just the country is divided, but even the camps of devotees are divided. And not just blue and red and, Republican and Democrat or left-wing and right-wing, but there's so many factions and camps. So what is it that will truly reunite us? It is the Sankirtan movement of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. That's why Bhaktivinoda Thakur, the true pioneer and visionary, he said, I'm seeing that the day will come when the Russians and the Prussians, together with the Indian brothers and the Europeans and Americans, they will chant and dance Jai Sachinandana Gaura Hari and perform Harinam Sankirtan. That day will come. And that day has come. Why? Because Srila Prabhupada, he appreciated everybody. And that appreciation was so powerful that he attracted people from all walks of life to give up their conditioning, to give up their families, their jobs, their opportunities, and to join the Sankirtan movement of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and to live simple lives, and to accept the Vedic teachings, even if sometimes they may seem unpalatable, they may seem a little rigid, a little stark, but we're getting the principles here. The details, we have to adjust them in our own locale, in our own situation, in our own lives. Srila Prabhupada often mentioned, I've given you the framework, now you fill in the details. And as he made it very clear in his famous Chaitanya Charitamrita purports, that the details, the way how you do things in India will be different than the way you do things in America or in Europe. And he gave that, he had the largeness the largesse to accommodate such differences, because he was fully convinced that the purity and the strength of the Sankirtan movement of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu will inspire and motivate and empower any sincere practitioner to overcome all seeming difficulties and inebrieties. So these are some reflections on these verses. Today is also the beginning of Katyayani Vrata. Yesterday was the last day of Kartik and Bhishma Panchaka and Damodar Vrat, and now starts Katyayani Vrat. And we may ask ourselves, what does that mean? It means that it is the time when the unmarried gopis, they performed austerities to please Katyayani, who is, according to normal or regular understanding, is a form of Durga, but the Acharyas explain actually she's Yogamaya, she's the internal potency of the Lord. So they were performing great austerities because they wanted Krishna as their husband. They were in love with Krishna, and they were ready to perform austerity in order to achieve Krishna as their husband. And what kind of austerity they performed? It is explained in the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam in the 22nd chapter, that they would get up early every morning, and while singing songs and holding each other's hands, they would walk down to the Jamuna and take cold bath, and they would only eat havishyana, which is unspiced khichdi made from rice and dal, just simple mung dal and rice with no turmeric, no spices, and no salt. That's the food they would eat for one entire month. And when they went to the river, they made a deity of Katyayani or Durga from sand, and they would worship it with flowers and with sandalwood paste, and in this way they would offer these simple items to Katyayani, and their only prayer was, please allow us to get Krishna as our husband, because that was their single desire. So we know that later on Krishna appeared to them and he stole the garments of these young girls. Krishna was accompanied by some young cowherd boys, but it is explained by the Acharyas they were actually very, very young. They were toddlers. They were practically infants, so they didn't have any distinction between male, and they didn't make any distinctions between male and female. So the girls were bathing naked in the river, and Krishna went there and he picked up their clothes and he climbed up on a tree and he was speaking to the gopis and telling them that if they wanted their clothes back, they had to come out one by one and ask him and get the clothes from him. And initially they were frightened at this prospect, and they would scold him and say that we will tell on you, you cannot do this, we'll tell Nanda Baba. And Krishna said, no, actually they said they will tell King Kamsa. But he said that he doesn't care for Kamsa. He's not afraid of him at all. And he will not give back their clothes. So the girls were shivering. They were very cold. And at some point, they surrendered. And he said that if you come out and you offer your pranams, then I will give you back your clothes. So they came out, and Krishna, very smilingly and lovingly, he gave them back their clothes, their garments, And he said that your vow of austerity will achieve its full result. And very soon, you will get the benediction that you desired. And that autumn, the next autumn, was when Krishna was performing the rasa dance, and he fulfilled the gopis' desire to have him as their as their lover or as their husband. So Krishna, he's in the heart of his devotees, and he knows what they desire, and he knows also how to draw out that love. Sometimes we may feel a little disturbed. Why is Krishna not more responsive? Why is Krishna not appearing? Why is Krishna not manifesting or arranging things in a way that are agreeable to me? And we can see this in many different instances in Krishna's pastimes. And Srila Prabhupada and the Acharyas comment that Krishna does this specifically to draw out more love and to help the devotee sometimes overcome some of these obstacles or some of these attachments or some of these other distracting factors in life. So when Krishna plays his game, we should not become upset with him. We should not. We can become upset, of course, but a devotee, even when he's upset, he will lovingly direct his frustration and his scolding and his plight towards the Lord. And even that is enjoyable for Krishna, because the devotee doesn't have any other recourse. To whom does he want to go? It's just like sometimes you see a child get slapped by the mother, and then it runs back to the mother and it grabs the legs of the mother, because there's no other shelter. There's nowhere else to go. That's the only refuge that the devotee has. So Krishna is doing that not because of maliciousness, but because Krishna is very kind. He's very considerate. He loves us so much that he does whatever is required for us to come closer to him and to offer our heart, to offer our love to him. Just as it is shown here in the topmost example by the gopis of Vrindavan, who were so surrendered and dedicated that they gave up even their prestige, even their chastity, even the social opinion for the sake of pleasing Krishna. Just like when there was the pastime of Krishna having a headache, and nobody wanted to give dust. But the gopis said, take. Aren't you afraid that you will go to hell? Yeah, that is perfectly fine. But Krishna has a headache. If his headache can become alleviated by simply a fraction of a second, we're happy to go to hell for thousands of kalpas. That is perfectly all right. So their focus is how to give pleasure to Krishna. As long as my focus is still on how can I enjoy and how can I control in this world, how can I prove my superiority, how can I prove others wrong and get some enjoyment from that, then bhakti is very far. So let us help each other to develop this culture of appreciation, this culture of empowerment, this culture of succession, and in this way our sangha will increase unlimitedly. People will feel attracted. They will want to be part of this Hare Krishna movement. Nowadays it's quite interesting to see that there's so many groups who talk about bhakti and about kirtan, and even the Mayavadis are using all these different tools and techniques, and they do yagya, and they speak about achintya beda beda tattva, even though they're complete Mayavadis. So everybody is speaking about similar type of topics. But if we want to know what is the difference, we have to dig a little deeper. What is the underlying motive? What is the intention? Why do I serve Guru? Why do I serve Krishna? What do I want to get out of this? Am I doing it just for the love of it? Am I doing it just to please? or do I have some ulterior motive? So by doing inspirational sadhana and engaging in the Sankirtan movement of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, that helps us to upgrade our consciousness, to constantly refine and realign our heart with the mood and mission of the acharyas. Nirvishesha shunyavadi paschatya desa tarine. Srila Prabhupada came to defeat impersonalism and voidism and to preach Krishna consciousness in these Western lands. So, as aspiring Prabhupada servants of Srila Prabhupada, let us embrace his Vani, let us embrace his mission, and rack our brains how we can create attractive communities that will make Srila Prabhupada proud, that will help people appreciate Srila Prabhupada's instructions, his shiksha, help them understand and enter into these teachings. And in this way, we can truly make Srila Prabhupada happy and proud, and he will bestow his unconditional mercy and benedictions upon all of us. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Thank you for your class. Like the woman you met in Houston, I feel much better now. And I'm going to start my exercise of appreciating devotees this week by appreciating your singular contribution to our Sangha. Thank you so much. Your classes are well researched, they're shastrically based, and they're very enthusiastically delivered. So thank you. I had a question. You mentioned that Manu, in delivering the Manu Sankita, if I understood you correctly, understood that the laws he was providing would one way or another have to be adapted to time, place, and circumstance. And so if something is not authoritative, it tends to be speculative. What is the source of the proper interpretation or understanding of the laws of the Manu Samhita for the current age?
Well, thank you for your appreciation and also for putting me on the spot and giving me a crunchy verse. As far as your question goes, it stated that when 5 Brahmins, after thorough discussion and research, come to a conclusion, then we should take it as authoritative. So, first of all, we need to create those Brahminical councils. They have to be there. They have to be established in every temple to be able to understand and apply the law according to the locale, according to the situation. Srila Prabhupada did that himself, that he made adjustments and he made certain concessions according to the situation. That doesn't mean that he threw out the law or he threw out authority, but he adjusted it and he applied it in order to make it actually beneficial. Because not operation successful, patient dead, but what's the best outcome? What is it that we're trying to achieve by this? That should be the question. And that can only be done by truly selfless people, by people who do not have a vested interest, economic, political, or even psychological, that I like to control and manipulate other people, or I like to push them down, or they have no agenda. They simply have the best interests of society and also of the individual at heart. So that's why Srila Prabhupada created this ISKCON movement, to create a class of Brahmins who have that detached attitude, because they're fully confident that Krishna's teachings are relevant in today's days and age. I don't know if this helps, if this answers your question.
It does, and it reminds us of the extreme responsibility, should we choose to accept it, of being Prabhupada Nuga's extreme responsibility that position entails. So yes, thank you very much. I appreciate your answer.
Yeah, it's a tall order. It's not an easy task, because if Brahmins misjudge a situation or they give a wrong advice, then things really go south. Then things really disintegrate. As we can see, like in sacrifices, when there are mistakes or when they're acting as counselors and they give wrong advice to the leader, that can really be very, very destructive. Thank you. Other points or comments?
Yes, I'm going to concur with Jai Jagadish Prabhu. Wonderful class. Thank you so much for giving us your association. Very, very enlightening. I wanted to add a little, that's kind of sticking my neck out here, but add a little balance to what, if we take it, the letter of the law versus the intent of the law, where Prabhupada talks about abolishing divorce. He talks about how in Vedic times, by the way, I'm not at my book right now, my computer, so I can't recall exactly what he said, but he was talking about the importance of once getting married, staying together, no divorce. And I think he specifically used the word abolish divorce. But I think the reality is that we have to be a little more broad-minded, knowing that is a principle that once getting married, that should be for life. But the reality is, I've been around this movement for almost 50 years, and I've seen some very incompatible relationships and marriages that had they have not separated and got remarried, it could have been really disastrous. And having worked in the wedding industry now for, well over 40 years, and having performed about roughly 7,000 marriages. Most of the marriages I perform, people coming to Hawaii, it's not it's not the first marriage. They're kind of going to get away, and they screwed up the first one. The first one didn't go so well, and now they're coming to profit from their mistakes. I've just heard so many stories of disastrous relationships where people got together young, they were naive, they were lusty, and they got married, and it was a disaster. And then they meet, they divorce and they find someone else, and it works out beautifully. In fact, it was interesting to cite an example, which is making me think of this. On Thanksgiving, I got a call from a physician, a doctor. He's a radiology oncologist, and I married him 25 years ago, so he called me on his anniversary. This was not his first marriage. It was his second marriage, and now he's got beautiful children. Him and his wife have adopted other children to expand the family. Really, really successful. The two of them are so much in love. But I do remember he reminded me back of a conversation we had when he married him about his first marriage. It was a disaster. So I just think we have to be a little bit broad-minded in that regard and know what is the principle. But in reality, an incompatible marriage can be really, really dangerous. And we have to just be a little open-minded in that regard and deal accordingly.
Yes, thank you, Narahari Prabhu, for bringing up these important points. which just underlines the importance of creating a wisdom culture where youth are trained and educated in these values and principles, so that not only do they learn it in theory, but they see the role model of their parents, because monkey see, monkey do. You can read a lot of things in books and hear them in class, but what really sticks is what your friends do and what you see at home being done. So to be that role model, and then to try to help also junior devotees how to transition through the stages of life. And I see that this is a real growth market. We really need, you can call them career counselors, you can call them elders, you can call them just mature devotees in Krishna consciousness, who not just by their teaching, but mostly by their own example, by their listening, and by their empathy, can guide juniors through their stages of life, so they do not have to make all the other stupid mistakes that many of us had to make. So that would be something really important that would help to, not just attract people, but also keep people. Because I see that you win or lose a game in the transitions when you shift gears. So in a similar way, we've lost a lot of people in transitions. We lost them because they were not feeling the support and the guidance and the acceptance and the appreciation. And then they did it in a wrong way, in a weird way, or in a very haphazard way, and it didn't really work out that great. So and thank you for providing that service for people. And more than anything else, people need encouragement. People need appreciation. I'm always surprised. I was yesterday in Mountain View at the farmers market, and I just walk up to the different booths, and I only have one question: did you grow all this by yourself? And people are ready to take books, to give me money, to give me as much produce as I want. It's unbelievable. Why? I just appreciate who they are and what they do. And it's not rocket science. And if we actually mean it, if we're actually sincere, just like you're doing this, and not because it's just a great business, but because you truly feel for these people, and you want them to be well. You want them to be in a stable, peaceful situation where they can actually think and practice spiritual life. And that's why we have these ashrams. And it's supposed to be a position of strength where we can act for the benefit of each other and of society at large. So, yes, thank you for making these important points. Other questions or comments?
Prabhu, you must have read Andrew Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People.
Not really, no. But I could write my own book on, how to lose friends and make enemies, because through the School of Hard Knocks, I've pretty much figured out what doesn't work. And if you're a little perceptive, then just by doing the exact opposite, you usually figure out what does work. But we have a lot of role models in our tradition, and Krishna is there showing us. It's actually quite simple. People are just looking to be acknowledged, to be validated, to be heard, and to be appreciated. And that's pretty much what it takes. Any other points?
Well,
I'd also like to say that your class is very inspiring. As always. Anyone else? Well, then I guess we can let you go, Prabhu. Thank you so much for your support.
One little thought crossed my mind when Navina Nirada was describing about how so many seniors were there when King Parikit was getting ready to depart, and the new kid on the block, so to speak, was speaking and enlivening everyone. Sukadeva Goswami, and describing him that he wearing nothing but the four directions. Anyway, the thought crossed my mind that here's young Navina Nirada. You have so many senior Prabhupada disciples here on the Sangha, but yet you're giving just such a wonderful class, and we're just sitting back, totally enlivened by hearing you speak. So that was, I was kind of picturing you in that position. And I'm sure that the seniors, when King Parikit was passing, they were so much appreciating young Sukadeva Goswami, so enlivening to them. And so as you were describing that, I was feeling I was getting a little taste of that, appreciating and just showing how this movement works. You're a second generation devotee, speaking with so articulate and with such potency that I was very enlivened by your class.
Well, thank you for that, Narahari Prabhu. I was not trying to insinuate a comparison, between these two scenarios. I was in Alachua a few weeks back, and one senior lady came up to me and asked me, "What is your name?" after the class. And, "How old are you?" "You are so young." And it's so funny because in San Francisco, they tell me I'm too old, I can't talk to the kids anymore. And in other places, they say, "You're so young." So it's really weird because you're never really in the proper age, which proves the point that we just have to, it's kind of ironic. And also, if we really want this movement to succeed, we have to learn how to empower the next generations to come. I think this is the legacy project, and if we can all work on that, I'm working on it. I've taken myself out of the equation. San Francisco runs, and when I'm not there, much better than when I'm there. So to also, not just through the legislation, but through the culture of empowerment, because we have so much opportunity, we have so many talented and gifted devotees. And right now, if a young person were to come into the movement and ask me, "Okay, what's my career prospect? What's my opportunity here in this movement?" I can give them general encouragement, but as far as, okay, you take this course and that course and that course, and then you're going to be, there is no real clear track. There's no career track or no prospect. We can say, okay, it's pure devotional service, and that should be good enough. It was good enough for us to join this movement. But believe it or not, people would like to see what is that vision that I'm buying into. And so to make it not just attractive, but also relatable and plausible, and help people grow through their different stages of life in Krishna consciousness, that will help us to actually, create a stronger and more vibrant community. So right now we have this momentous task of moving forward into the unknown, like King Prithu and Archie did, and taking that leap of faith, of sweet surrender all over again, going on Sankirtan and just dancing to Krishna's love song that he plays on his flute, not knowing what the future will entail, and making space for future generations to move into the center and take up responsibility and expand the mission. I know it is a daunting task, and it's a little bit challenging, especially as we grow older in age and we're not so healthy and maybe not so secure and not so well off. Yet at the same time, we have full confidence that Srila Prabhupada has guided and protected and nourished us all throughout our lives. So why would it be any different in the times to come? So thank you again for your trust and for your example and for your patience with me. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Gaur Bhakti Vrinda ki jai. Hare Krishna. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripasundabhyeva Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavescha. Hare Krishna. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.